You ever seen that picture of Megadeth where Dave Mustaine's got a grenade on his bullet belt and there's like a revolver sticking out of his fly? Welcome to the Witch and Metal Gods of Grind special. So it's 1992, earache records, all your major bands are riding on a high, people can't get enough of them, so what can you do? Well, you're following the footsteps of the Grind Crusher tour, put them all together, bang them out on tour. What could possibly go wrong? The Gods of Grind tour saw Carcass, Cathedral, Confessor and Entombed on what was at that time quite an extensive tour across Europe, England, Holland, Germany, and then back to Holland, I think, all of which was widely anticipated by the death metal underground. Carcass had just released Necroticism, Descanting the Insalubrious. Entombed had Clandestine. Some people were raving about Cathedral's Forest of Equilibrium. And relative unknowns, Confessor, had released this often misunderstood classic, Condemned. Four bands there who seemingly didn't have that much in common other than being on the same label. Confessor, technical, traditional doom metal band. Cathedral, Lee Dorian, obviously famously of Napalm Death. Very, very slow doom record. Carcass's ultra technical death, grind, gore, core. And Entombed doing some straight up Swedish death metal. I was 14 at the time and I absolutely jumped at the chance to get along to the Northern date. There were 3 dates in the UK: Bradford Queen's Hall, Birmingham Edwards, London Astoria, where there was a film crew. Carcass, Cathedral and Entombed all brought out live videos that were filmed at the Astoria, but I'd never seen the Confessor footage. So the Syndicate, who were a 2-man team that promoted all the gigs in Liverpool, all the underground death metal gigs, most of them anyway, in Liverpool, put on a coach from the Royal Court, which was the theatre in Liverpool. They used to host gigs in the basement there, in the bar, in the cellar, to Bradford. So me and my schoolmate Mark, ticket each, went down. On the coach on the way down, people were buzzing because maybe in order to have something new to plug on the tour, maybe for the bands to have something to buy food with, each band brought out an EP. Now, if you listened to this month's episode of Witch and Metal, you will have heard one track from each of the EPs. And as it would happen, I've got here Entombed's Stranger Aeons, Cathedral's Soul Sacrifice, Carcass's Tools of the Trade. Don't have the Confessor EP, it's like my holy grail. Got this though, this has got the tracks on. So I'm just going to talk through these EPs first before I get onto the actual show itself. Start off with the Confessor tracks. So their EP starts off with Condemned, which is just the same version that's on the album, lifted off with a video film for it. I think, yeah, there was a video film for each song. There's 2 more tracks, both Trouble covers, Last Judgment, End Time. Now, Last Judgment, really interesting because it's a Trouble song that appeared on a compilation. It's not on a Trouble album. So it's a pretty obscure song for them to cover. And because of licensing issues, none of those tracks are on Spotify. They're not on YouTube. Can't get them anywhere. I played one on the show this month though. So unless you own this, or you own the 12-inch, you won't get to hear those Trouble covers anywhere. So then you've got Cathedral's Soul Sacrifice EP, 4 tracks on it: Soul Sacrifice, Autumn Twilight, Frozen Rapture and Golden Blood Flooding. Now the version of Soul Sacrifice that's on this EP is a re-recording of the version of Soul Sacrifice that's on Forest of Equilibrium. So the version of Forest of Equilibrium really slow, it's almost funereal. The version that's on the EP is a kind of bouncy, sped up version. Now, it's very easy to look back with like 30 years hindsight and say, well, Cathedral were that kind of bouncy, traditional doom band all along. But at the time, it was quite a departure for them, especially people had been used to Lee being in Napalm Death, doing Scum and From Enslavement to Obliteration, then doing Forest of Equilibrium, which was really slow, to then change again in the space of another like 6 months to what was on this EP, Autumn Twilight. Really good, kind of mid-tempo doom traditional metal tune. Frozen Rapture kind of goes back into that slowed down doom that we're used to from the debut album, and then we close with Golden Blood Flooding, which again is another quite mid-tempo, slowed down traditional Cathedral song. Entombed. At this point in time, Entombed were a bit of an enigma. They brought out Left Hand Path out of the ashes of Nihilist, the LG Petrov singing. Then at some point, LG was no longer in the band. Crawl came out with Ove Safstrom from Nirvana 2002 doing vocals, guest vocals. And then the Clandestine album came out. Now, it was called Clandestine for a reason. Now, it was called Clandestine for a reason because clandestine means secret. And the big secret was that Johnny Dordvik was not the singer in Entombed. He was on all the promotional material. He was billed as being the singer on the album. And he was in the videos. He wasn't in the studio though. All vocals on Clandestine were recorded by Nicky Anderson and Uffe Sutherland. And then, when they brought out Stranger Aeons, this was actually classed as being Johnny Dordvik singing on this as well, but he's not. In fact, Alex Hellard isn't even on this. This entire EP is just Nicky Anderson and Uffe Sutherland recording 2 songs in a different session than the session that gave us Clandestine. To compound things even more, when we turned up for the gig, we were expected to see Johnny Dordvik singing for them. And LG Petrov was back in the band. More of that in a minute. Stranger Aeons is just taken from the Clandestine album sessions. But what's really interesting are 2 other tracks on here. Dusk and Shreds of Flesh, which were taken from another session at the same time, with just Nicky Anderson and Uffe Sutherland on it. That's it, just the 2 of them. And it just sounds fantastic. Shreds of Flesh is a song from the Nihilist demo days, and it's updated obviously with the 2 new members there recording it. Dusk is a completely new song that doesn't appear anywhere else, and it's a good example of where Entombed were at that moment. Now, Carcass's Tools of the Trade is probably the EP out of these 4 that you've heard most about, because it's Tools of the Trade, which was a new song for the EP, also got Incarnated Soul and Abuse on there, which had a video on MTV. Really strange video where they're pulling rubber over their faces and Mike Hammond covered in flour, barefoot on top of his stack, playing his guitar. But let's not forget that Carcass always had that kind of tongue-in-cheek, serious as they are and they're very serious guys, that kind of tongue-in-cheek, let's take the piss kind of attitude, which coming from the punk rock underground. But this is extremely interesting EP. As I say, it's got the 2 tracks that are just taken straight from Necroticism. But then there's 2 other tracks on here. Hepatic Tissue Fermentation 2, which is a re-recorded version of a song from Rika Putrefaction. Let's not forget, there's a big fuss made about how badly produced Rika Putrefaction was. So being able to hear the song recorded in a modern studio where the engineer tends to get what Carcass are doing a bit more, it's really exciting. And then the final track is a track that I played on the show this month. And if you've listened to the show, and if not, why not? If you've listened to the show, you'll have heard me struggle with the name of it. Let's have another go. Pyosified, Still Rotten to the Gore. which is a re-recording, obviously, of the song from the Pathological compilation, which was a compilation that came out in 1989. Rare tracks by Napalm Death, Silverfish, Coil, Carcass, obviously, Godflesh, God, Terminal Cheesecake. So to hear that re-recorded is brilliant because it's kind of brought more up to date when the band kind of have a bit more of an understanding of their musicality. Some of the solos on this EP are fantastic. All solos are given names as well by Carcass at the time. Main to Please by W.G. Steer. Up to the Hilt by Emma Mott. Inebriating Melody by W.G. Steer. On to the gig. So we got the coach down from Liverpool. We arrived. Gig was meant to start at 7. We arrived about halfway through Confessor's set. I'd never heard Confessor before. I honestly thought that they were going to be like a grind band. When we got there and they were playing, I really wasn't ready for the kind of high-pitched vocals, technical riffing, but I was instantly in love with the band and I've been a massive fan ever since. Still can't track down that 12-inch though. Cathedral up next and obviously playing really slow. I'd seen Cathedral previously in Liverpool, and one thing that always struck me about Cathedral was to be playing these like really slow, dirgeful songs and there'd just be streams of people stage diving. I was 14 years old at the time. You're not going to stop me stage diving. I was up there as well. Sorry, late. It's been really off-putting for me. One thing I remember really clearly about the Cathedral set was that I think it was Adam who was playing like a BC rich bitch with a Solitude Eterna sticker on it. It was huge. Big Solitude Eternus logo. I think so anyway. I may have just invented that. Check the video. Speaking of the video, there's a video online from Bradford. I actually own a video bootleg of Gods of Grind from Bradford, and I'm convinced, I've not seen it for years because I don't own a VHS player. I'm convinced that it's filmed from a different angle than the one that's on YouTube, but I'm not sure. Entombed up next. Like I say, Entombed came on stage and we were expecting to see big curly haired Johnny Dordovic come on stage. And it was LG, which was great for me because I always preferred LG's vocals anyway to what I thought at the time were Johnny's, but were actually Nicky Anderson. And Entombed were fantastic. As I say, they had Left Hand Path had been out for a while. Obviously, they'd played together for years as Nihilist. Clandestine had come out, and LG, from the minute that he was back in the band, LG just made those songs his own. And I can remember clearly something that'll stay with me forever is we watched the first half of Entombed set from up on the balcony, and then we went down to the front over the left-hand side of the stage to where Alex Hellard was, and just looking up and watching Alex play on stage when they went into the keyboard Phantasm theme tune from Left Hand Path, and Alex just played it on the guitar, and it was for me that was like a defining moment in 1990s death metal, being there and being able to see that. Obviously Entombed then went on to do the kind of Hollow Man EP, Wolverine Blues, go down that whole Death and Roll. If you watch back now the video from the London Astoria date on this tour, Monkey Puss, you kind of get that feeling of the noise rock kind of other than death metal influences in Entombed's sound and the way that they're playing live and stuff that probably didn't come across that obviously on the album. Looking back now, the likes of Hollow Man and Wolverine Blues don't seem like that much of a surprise, but at the time, following on from Left Hand Path, Clandestine, Crawl, Strange Aeons EP even, was a big change. When I first heard Hollow Man, I just didn't get it. It took me a while to get Hollow Man. And then last on stage were Carcass. They started with the intro to In Propagation, which obviously is the intro of Necroticism, and they were just absolutely fantastic. They played the best songs off the album, stuff like Ruptured and Purulence, Recaputification, Exhume to Consume, all that kind of thing. That was for me my favourite time of seeing Carcass. I was fortunate enough because I'm from Liverpool. Carcass used to play in Liverpool all the time. I was lucky enough to see Carcass, I'd say between 10 and 15 times. More than 10, no more than 15. And all of those gigs were before Heartwork came out. Now, I'm not saying that Heartwork is a bad album, but it's not my favourite Carcass album because I was fortunate enough to have done these, at this time. I just didn't get them going more musically. It just wasn't for me at the time. I wanted more and more aggression. What does a 14-year-old know? As we know, what happened to the bands after that? Entombed went on to do their death and roll thing. Wolverine Blues was absolutely massive and is one of the most influential albums in metal. One of the most recognisable death metal songs ever. Cathedral went on to wear lots of flares and ride a worm. Lots of disco. Huggy Bear, Ooh Yeah. Carcass became the death metal Thin Lizzy. Actually, the Carcass story doesn't stop there, and it is really interesting. Earache signed a deal with Columbia Records to take almost all the roster to go over, and it was worth somebody made an awful lot of money off that. I don't think it was the bands. I'm not sure. Somebody made a lot of money off that. I remember it being advertised on the front of the Liverpool Echo because of Carcass. Carcass went on to record Heartwork, obviously, which is correctly lauded as a classic, one of the best metal albums of all time. It's not a death metal album, it's not a thrash metal album, it's not a Thin Lizzy album, it's got some southern rock in there. There's a bit of everything in that album. And then they were famously, all the bands dropped by Columbia. Carcass were told that Jeff had to learn how to sing. They had to write more commercial music. And the last Carcass album, Swan Song, is the most punk rock album ever recorded by a metal band. It's a big middle finger to Columbia. Corporate rock really does suck. Brilliant. For me, 1992, Gods of Grind tour was when everything came together perfectly, and I don't think that it was like that again afterwards for death metal. Been some absolutely amazing death metal, grindcore, whatever you want to call it, albums come out since, but for me as a 14-year-old young man, it was just absolutely perfect. Anyway, don't forget, watch all the videos, subscribe, give me a like, head over to Access Northwest. As I say, the April show has got a Gods of Grind special, and it's the only place you're going to hear that Confessor song. Take it easy, see you soon, Metal Maniacs.